data's not just a skill set, and data's not just engineering. It's not like an offspring of like software engineering. It is its own thing. It's closer to the user than engineering sort of usually sits. If you just walk in and say the data says that last campaign was a failure, you didn't attract anyone that you wanted to, you're probably not going to get a good response. You're not going to get like people going, oh yeah, you're right, I'm terrible at my job. Why do I care about your data, your AI, your technology, anything? Part of their job, do they love doing? Okay, don't AI that. Don't take that away from them, because that's what they love. I don't want my colleagues to be doom scrolling on our dashboards. I want them to get their information and go. And this is probably going to draw me a lot of heat on LinkedIn, but the amount of people sitting there going like,
hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Discussing New Approaches in AI, Data and Technology. I'm your host, as always, Eric Walker-Rawson, and today I'm joined by Sam Wrench, who is the Data Operations Lead at Reality Mine. And we're actually covering a couple of different topics today. So the first one is, how do we build data leadership that's human-centered? How do we build a data culture that succeeds and is used by the business, most importantly? And also viewing data as a product. But before we get into that, it'd be great to maybe have a little quick intro from you, Sam, just to give a bit more to your background and lead up to where you are now at Reality Mine.
Yeah, certainly. I think I always have this thing where I'll start the conversation and be like, oh, I've probably had quite a meandering career, or not the non-traditional like sort of step into data leadership, but I'm feeling more and more that's not the case. I feel like there's no traditional way into data leadership these days. I think people come from all sort of backgrounds, but my sort of skill set has been formed by sort of a variety of different areas. Initially in my early career, I was wanting to do more around sort of research scientist side of things. So I've worked for sort of some major pharmaceutical businesses, been sort of in the labs there, which, to be fair, was a good introduction towards like a good level of rigor for doing things right. From there, I moved into doing a PhD, which was around statistical genetics, which was where I first started to get into sort of more heavy programming using sort of larger data sets, and in particular with the genetic side of things, it was data sets that were fairly messy. There was a lot of requirement to sort of do a lot of heavy transformations on those to try and actually make sure that the data set was kind of representative of what we were seeing. And then during that period as well, I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to start coaching with the England Dodgeball team, and then eventually with the GB Dodgeball team as well. So I was with those two teams for a number of years. Took them through some really interesting times in terms of like the world stage. They were really hitting a strong groove alongside a few other teams worldwide. So, it was really like how we can take a team that's already performing at really the highest possible standard and just get those tiny little, sort of steps above that to sort of take them to the next level. So yeah, some really exciting times with them, and quite a whirlwind experience where I still sort of sit back and go, was that actually sort of me stood in the box, sort of coaching these guys, in this like sort of World Cup final? It was bizarre, very bizarre experience, but it really sort of set me up well for what was the sort of next step through my career, which was more focused around mental health and psychology, and sort of using physical activity as a vessel to sort of help people through difficult times. And then, of course, that naturally then led into working in data, as you do. So it was a very interesting sort of, no one could ever predict my next move, and a lot of times I couldn't either. So yeah, once I landed in data, the combination of sort of research and curiosity in that sense, and then the sort of leadership that came through coaching and sort of trying to get those teams that worked well together, but raised the bar every time, naturally just sort of meant that I just fell into sort of leadership roles. And that's where I sit now today with Reality Mine. So a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah, no, it does sound like it. I mean, it's a very interesting journey. I mean, to go from sort of researching genetics to dodgeball to into data leadership. Interestingly, from my perspective, obviously, as a recruiter or someone that works with a lot of data leaderships, I don't think there is such a thing as normal. The phrase that I often hear when speaking with people about their experiences, which is mostly what I do on a professional side, is all these different crazy routes into data, into technology. I think it's an AI. It's a very diverse skill set, which probably needs to be acknowledged more than it being just a traditional technologist route or anything else, especially into leadership. That's the correlation. There's different pathways. There's technical, and then there's a leadership pathway. The leadership pathway definitely creates more diversity of thought, I think. But I suppose that leads us naturally into, you can sort of see the elements of what we're going to talk about in some of that. But what should good data leadership look like, now and maybe drawing on the things that you had previously?
And I think, on the recruitment side of things there, I think it's a really naturally sort of leads us into where we're going. There's often not a friction, but I've found that like between myself and people that are classically hiring for engineering roles, like software engineering or these sort of things, which in our business, data is sort of a subsection of that engineering space. Engineering is maybe a little bit more structured in the way that like, okay, someone needs to be able to do these technical things. Whereas sort of maybe my challenge has always been, well, with data, the technical skills are important and I'll be glad if they're there. But if someone hasn't got that sort of like kind of feel for it and like the sort of intuition around, does this data feel normal? What, the thing that I'm saying is, a power user in terms of our customer base, is that true? Or is that like anomalous data? And like, that's kind of where I sort of have to challenge that back quite a lot in terms of data's not just a skill set and data's not just engineering. It's not like an offspring of like software engineering. It is its own thing, and it's very much more like it's closer to the user than engineering sort of usually sits. And I think like, there are, various different data leaders across the industry, and I don't think there's ever I could never sit there and say this is what a data leader should be. It can be possible for a data leader to come undone by going into a business and being like, I'm going to just do what I did last time in this team. I think data in particular, massively disruptive within businesses, whether it's a really mature data division or if it's the first time you've set up a data team within a business. You have to be mindful that as you're growing this team, you're going to end up discovering things that the business maybe are unaware of or challenges some existing opinions. You have to be careful of how you're going to put those across. Are
there any examples in your experience that you've dealt with that? Because it's something, especially from my side, that I come up against in people's experiences quite often. It's definitely a commonality that comes across.
Yeah, I think, so before joining Reality Mine, I worked at a retailer, and I think that is one of the, it's so easy within a retailer for you to as a business to say our core user is going to be this, or this is our target market, and it's fine to define that and to target towards that. But a lot of the time, the data that's where the truth is actually going to come from. So you might have targeted a certain audience, but the halo effect has actually strengthened certain areas of your customer base. And I think that's where data becomes very political at that point, because you have to sort of manage conversations very, very carefully, because it's not that you're criticizing anyone else in the business and you're saying, oh, you've done it wrong. It's you've targeted this really, really well, but what's happened is we've not penetrated that market well enough, but the halo effect has actually strengthened other demographics that we weren't necessarily focusing on. So let's potentially lean into that and see if we can continue to strengthen it. So it's where a data leader has to wear many hats. Like, you have to be technical enough to be able to have those conversations with your team. I think it's important for the team to sit there and go, yeah, this person probably could do what I'm doing. Maybe not as good as I could do it, but I know that they can still build a dashboard, run some SQL, do whatever they need to do in Python. There's that, which I think gives the team a bit of they're one of us, we're in this together. But then beyond that, you have to be incredibly political in terms of the way you handle the business. You have to be a bit product led. You have to be marketing led. You have to have that understanding of the whole industry to be able to then have those conversations in a way that people are going to actually align to you and really want to work together with you. Because if you just walk in and say the data says that last campaign was a failure, you didn't attract anyone that you wanted to, you're probably not going to get a good response. You're not going to get people going, oh yeah, you're right, I'm terrible at my job, please tell me more. They're going to be like, oh, this person clearly doesn't know what they're doing, I'm just going to carry on doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, holds a mirror up often to people, especially maybe people that don't want to have a mirror held up to them potentially. And I suppose there's a bit of ego with that as well. If you're telling an executive that the decisions that they made are wrong, you've got to be prepared for the fallout. So I suppose, how do you approach something like that where obviously the advantage, I think, and maybe this is advice for data leaders, but the advantage is you have prep time. You know if something is wrong before you enter that into that meeting. So that gives you a bit of an advantage in terms of how you approach, almost how to map out how you deliver this in a way that you do.
Yeah.
How do you approach something like that?
I think the real key to it is you're never really going to know how someone's going to respond to it. Knowing yourself is a massive part of it. So psychologically understanding how you handle conflict is going to be massive. I know it's a bit of a curveball response, but if you know that as soon as someone challenges you, you are going to snap back, you need to make sure that you in that conversation are staying regulated, because as soon as you take people out of a mentally regulated state, the conversation's over. They're not going to make rational decisions, and that's just biology for you. So it's kind of understanding how you're going to react in that space when people maybe push back against you. And away from that, the best way to land insight is actually to make sure that it helps someone achieve their goals. Most people in these positions, most people in the jobs, they're not there to do things wrong. They're not there to, just second guess and hopefully everything works. They want to succeed. And if they've not had the information previously to make an informed decision, you don't want to storm in there and go, oh, well, you should have been using this because, it wasn't available. It's more, let's take them on a journey. Let's really get into the room with them and really understand that we're a partner in this. We're here to collaborate. We're here to work with you to make sure that you and your team can bring more information into that decision in the future. So it's not just make a better decision. And I was very careful not to say better decision then, because it's not better or worse. It's more informed. And this whole data-driven, we'll do data-driven culture, we'll do data-driven this. It's information-driven. The line you want to get is you want to make sure that that person's bringing their domain knowledge, which they have significant more than you will, and combining that with your domain knowledge and the data that your team can bring together. It's finding the line where those two can come together and make the most informed decision. So yeah, that's kind of how I approach it. And I'd say it's probably weird starting there with the psychological side of things, but ego is an incredibly powerful thing. I've sort of jokingly said there was a strongman gym that I used to go to. Not that I'm a strongman, it's where my physio used to train. So he took me there to sort of help me sort out when I tore my ACL. So he took me to this gym, and there was a sign above the door, the main door into the gym, and a coat rack to the one side, and it just pointed to the coat rack and said, "Please hang your ego here." And I was like, I love that. There's no place for an ego in the gym. You are going to injure yourself if you're just lifting for ego. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I'd love to put one of those just above the boardroom.
I was going to say,
as you walk in, it's just hey guys, we're all here to do the same thing here. We don't want to hurt the business. We don't want to cause any damage here. So let's just hang our egos here. It's a safe space. We're going to just try and get away through this situation that we've landed ourselves in. It's never going to happen, because as soon as you put that sign above a door of a boardroom, you know that someone's going to get triggered by it. But it's just that sort of that side of things.
Weirdly, it'll be the person whose ego you have to worry about that will be triggered by it.
Yeah, exactly.
It points out the problem, but yeah,
it will. Yeah, I've it reminds me, I was doing an internal sort of session on psychology and how to map resistance to change, and how to help people through change management, and using a paper that I'd sort of read numerous times and thought it was a really sort of well structured paper. There's sort of three I guess types of people that in terms of dealing with change. I think there's the enthusiast, which is someone that's yeah, great, I want to do that, I want to be with it, which is, they're great. You make them your champions, bring along with it. The second one was the passive integrators. They're sort of in the middle, they'll do it, but they don't believe in it. And then the word that they used in the paper was dissidents. So I was like, okay, just kind of put that up there. And as soon as I said it, I just saw the channel on the side of the presentation just light up with I think that's a really, really strong word. I think dissident is so disrespectful. And I was like, well, you've just outed yourself kind of there, that you've been triggered by that. So I feel like you probably don't want to go along with this strategy. But it was, I mean, that was, I tell you, for me, that was really, it was early on in my sort of leadership career. And I was like, okay, that word has instantly taken that person into a space where they don't want to interact with me anymore. And we didn't really have any productive interactions past that point, closed off entirely. But it really was proving that point. You say, like, you put the, leave your ego at the door sort of thing in a boardroom. That person that goes, that's the person that they're gone probably forever. You're going to have to do a lot of hard yards to get them back.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, what you're describing there is soft skills, obviously. And which is weird because, again, there's a perception definitely now, and I think that's always been there, like you pointed out earlier, where data work and being a data professional is viewed as a technical role, and even data leadership is viewed as a technical role. I mean, if you look at most job specifications for a data leader on the market today, you're going to see data qualifications, you're going to see sort of engineering qualifications, you're going to see all of the technical skills, all of those sorts of things. When I'm running a project on the recruitment side for clients that I work with, I mean, I have a process that I use called OnWiser, but and again, it's an acronym, but it targets or part of it targets or maps out, is a better word, the political nature of the role that the leader is coming into, because it is so important. It's not just, do you have the technical skills ready to do this? It's, are you able to navigate and present these sorts of things? I suppose then how do you, I mean, you could almost take the viewpoint that data is, and the insights that data uncovers is, like you said, is a truth. I suppose a good way of leaders to look at it is more that when you are trying to approach that political side, every bit of information is a data point that you can then correlate into how you deliver that strategy. But I suppose if someone has sort of dissented away from what you're trying to build, and like you said, data is a change agent within organizations. A lot of data work is you're trying to enact some sort of change or improve the business, which comes up against friction. How do you maybe not win them back on side? That might not be possible, but how do you try and push through with the change, even if you have people that, no matter if you've perfectly presented that presentation, how do you push forward with it?
I will say that there's probably there's no like right answer to that. I really wish I could say just like, oh yeah, actually, if you just do this, they're straight back on side. If you have met a pocket of resistance, and they will occur, like I think it's so. I think for a new leader in data, it can be really off-putting to be like, but I'm trying to help you, and you're just like throwing it back in my face, or you're not using the product I've put forward for you, and it can be really disheartening. You've kind of just got to start putting in the hard yards. I think if you know from the get-go that this person's probably going to be resistant to it, and like that comes from being like good at stakeholder mapping, having those conversations very early on. If you can understand where your resistance is, and I'd arguably say if you can afford to let people sit in the resistance whilst focusing on areas that you know you're going to get higher adoption, I would focus on the higher adoption spaces. And then without being too pointed, try and highlight the successes that this team is having. As I said before, everyone wants to succeed, and like there's, whatever their reason is for being resistant, and like you could do an entire podcast on like mapping those like reasons for resistance. If you can sort of show to them that there's a reason why we're wanting to go on this journey, there's a reason why we're taking it forward, and try and take it away from, and this is one thing I think is really important, especially in the world that's now everything is AI, take it away from the exec want this. Take it away from the someone's just seen a really shiny new car and they want that new car. It's going towards, well, actually, what is the benefit for you? And like one of the key ways to sort of really break down resistance is, what's in it for me? Why do I care about your data, your AI, your technology, anything? And it's like, well, with AI, it's like it can make your life a lot easier. And I was like, actually you can do a lot of tasks that you might find boring. So for me, writing documentation, I can do it. I will sit there and work with it, but I'd much rather just kind of have a conversation with like AI and then help that figure out what we're trying to do, and then go, okay, now write that up, and then I'll read through it and be like, okay, yeah, you've filled it with M dashes, maybe remove those so it looks like I've written it myself. So it's that sort of thing, is like trying to find something that they're particularly not enjoying doing, or like what part of their job do they love doing. Okay, don't AI that. Don't take that away from them because that's what they love. Take the stuff that they don't love away from them and say like, oh, we can make this a lot quicker. I mean, crikey, like ticket management, project management, documentation, all of this sort of stuff in the technical world. No one really wants to do it. Like no one wants to be moving Jira tickets from one place to another. Okay, can we find a way of doing that? Can we find a way that we can manage your workload and people can see visibility on it that doesn't require you sitting there for half a day going, oh, okay, I'm going to do this and the user story is this. If you can find that, take it away from them, and not in a sort of a, I'm going to take this away and you're never going to do it again. Take it away like, oh, I can help you do that. I can help you do that quicker. And sort of you've got to be, that's when you become like the salesman basically. You've really got to work with them on that space and find out what their pain point is.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned salesperson there, because I think as a leader you do have to have those sort of sales skills. It's almost you are now the advocate for data within the organisation. So what does that look like? And it's different in every organisation as well. I mean, again, I bring it back to the process that I mentioned earlier. On Wiser, I think there is more work to be done by people involved in the process of not hiring and everything else that can assist in that journey. Like if you were able to come into a position with these things fully mapped out, so have an idea of who's the blockers, who you need to work on, everything else, that will make that first sort of 3 to 6 month window a little bit easier in terms of transition. You mentioned human-centered earlier. So I suppose if we're building the blocks of leadership, where does human-centered fit into it, and why is it important as well?
So, I mean, it's almost quite odd having a conversation about why human-centered is important with making a team, because like, well, a team is humans, but I think that the side of it that is key is you're not just putting a bunch of individuals together. And like a team, by like any you look at any sport, if it's a team, whether it's a team of one athlete and a load of sort of physios, nutritionists and all that sort of stuff, it's a team. That team will be built to create the best environment for either that one athlete or that team around that athlete to perform at their best. And I think the human-centered side of it comes from, kind of as I was pointing on before, you kind of got to remove the technical side of it and then bring into the human side of it. So my team within Reality Mine didn't exist 12 months ago. I was brought in, there was 2 people sat in the business that were going to be in my team, but the team, my department just didn't exist. So we were brought in to sort of centralize that kind of data capacity in terms of using our data internally. So over the 12 months, it's been all about bringing in, the right skill set. We're attached to, sort of contractually attached to a certain technology. So we know we have to use that technology. And it's a very, in terms of a BI platform, it's very rarely used. We were recruiting a few weeks ago and someone was said to me, oh, we've looked at this skill set and there's 12 people that use it in the Northwest. And I was like, yeah, so we've got 2 of them, so can you find the other 10? And we've sort of, in that space, I knew that the first thing that I needed to do to get into my team was someone that was not just really, really good on that technology, which is where there's that intersection between technology and people. They need to be able to bring that technology to light, and we need someone that can do that. Not just through here's a really good dashboard, but that person then becomes the evangelist of that technology. They're going out across our business saying, oh no, we can do that. And that person is just bringing that technology to life. And that wouldn't have happened if I just got someone in, if I just got a person in to do the job. And that's where the human-centered does meet your sort of strategic direction. You have to be very mindful of I could have come in as a data leader and gone, okay, we're going to rip up all of our legacy systems. We're going to take everything out of the way. All these things you're used to using, we'll get rid of them and we'll rebuild them with something better. Not many people want that. Maybe a sort of an executive that wants to see big change might want you to go in there and tear everything down. But a lot of time it's no, I just want to see growth and success. So we knew where we were going strategically. I knew that the team over the next 12 months wasn't just going to be, I think when I joined, it was okay, you've got budget for 2 more people in his team. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know that this team's going to now be I think we're now at, 8 or 10 headcount. By the end of this next year, it'll be more towards 15, 16. And for a business of a headcount of 100, it's a good portion of our business is now going to be that team. People are why is your team growing so big? And it's well, because we need to. We need to be on this. And the human side of it is getting the right people together in that early formation of the team to embed the culture that you're going to need. And that culture is sort of curiosity, excitement. I need someone that's excited about what they're doing. I need someone that's going to sit there and go, look what I've done, look what I've built, because that's how adoption happens. If they just go, there's a dashboard, I'll do the next one. Your adoption is never going to happen, but if someone's going to sit alongside that stakeholder and be like, oh, that's really interesting that you have this problem with that. We can create that data and that desire to want people to use what they're doing.
How do you create that? Or how do you not even create that? Well, yes, create it within the team, because you need to sustain, because obviously you have it in theory and practice as a strategy, but then it's a different thing hiring the right people. So I suppose the first question is, how do you assess for that? Because again, it's, any data leaders watching this, you want to know how to assess the right people.
Yeah.
That's most important. You can have an idea of what the skill set is. In practice and what it looks like, it could be different. So how, and getting the right, how do you compare in that sort of thing? And then how do you sustain it over time as well? How do you build it into not the perfect idea that you had in your head, but something that benefits the business ultimately? Because it sounds like you're aligning this entire strategy and the culture to what the business needs anyway. You're aligning it to the business strategy, which is something, again, I always say as well, it's got to be aligned. Otherwise, if executive teams change, then it all collapses.
Oh yeah, that's exactly it. It needs to go along with the business. But I think the way that we do that sort of from the start, I've been criticised quite a lot in terms of how I interview. I interview very, very relaxed, and it catches a lot of people off guard. I will be just chilled out in my chair, having a conversation. Usually try and start the conversation with something that's completely away from it. There was, I forget who wrote it, but there was a psychologist that was saying, if you're going into a conversation with someone that is really, really stressed and not in a regulated state, try to have a conversation that's completely going to distract them entirely. And the example they used, and I used it once, is talk about a new mug. So our office had a new set of mugs in it. I walked in, I was like, have you tried these new mugs? They're absolutely mint. We've got a nice big rim. I can have a good swig of tea, and it's great. And they were like, what? I'm like, the new mugs, have you tried them? And they're like, oh, no, I didn't know we'd got new mugs. Different part of the brain, different conversation. And then you sort of as you've brought them into that sort of calmer exterior, you can then have that more normal conversation with them. But to try and make sure that they've got that excitement around what they do, when we do a technical test, so our interview process is very, very simple. It's a little 30-minute screening, which is, as we always open it with, it's not we're going to ask you loads of questions. We're going to check a few things about your CV, because we have to. We're going to do the sort of HR stuff where we ask you, all the questions you need to with that. But it's mostly, let's just figure out whether we're going to work well together. Let's just figure out whether your ambitions align with the team's growth, and let's figure that one out. Following that, we do a tech test, which is take home and don't send it back. It is, as soon as you get that tech test, you're going to be in the final round interview. I want you to present that back to me. I want you to talk me through it. We do two things within that, and a few candidates will sort of clap back at it, which I'm fine with. One is the data set is reasonably small. There's a fair amount of ambiguity in it, even though we provide them with sort of a data dictionary. It is laced with pitfalls. It's very bad data. It's mock data, so it's never going to be sort of true to real world. But there's purposely built into that some very big pitfalls. And then we ask them to do a maximum of 6-slide presentation. And then give us a wireframe of a dashboard at the end. What that does, we're going to have to change this tech test after this goes live. But what that does is it intentionally puts someone in a position where they go, what's the thing in this data set that I find most exciting? And what do I want to tell this person that's probably going to offer me a job about this data set? And you will see that there will be people that will completely miss all the pitfalls and all the errors within the data because they're too excited. They're just bull in a china shop. And those people can be great in a team. If you want someone that's going to be absolutely let them loose on the data set and see what they can find, those people are brilliant, because you just okay, we're going to let you wild on it. But what you need to have around them is someone that can be okay, so that isn't an insight, that's a hallucination of the data, or that's a fluctuation in the data. It's not a real world change. So you've got to pair those people up quite closely. But it sort of gives us that position where you just know that people they're going to present to you what they find interesting and what they find exciting. So you just learn a lot about how they work. If you say to someone, oh, go away and I want you to make a SQL query that joins this table to this table and then gives you like you go, okay, cool, I can do SQL. You find nothing about that person's personality. You find nothing about what they're interested in, how they think. The technical test in data isn't about technology. It's about how that person thinks. And like the person that sits there and points out all the pitfalls with the data and says, oh, here's how I'd restructure the data. Here's how I do things differently. And like this person's got a really good like feel for like what data quality is. And then they use the next 4 or 5 slides to give you insights. And you're like, okay, I trust this person's insights straight away because they know that there's errors within this data and they've sort of dealt with them. So yeah, that's kind of how we've structured it. And it's so far served us quite well. I feel like, the team that we've built they've got the right level of curiosity and I guess like bullishness with trying new ideas, but also they're reserved enough to be like, oh, okay, yeah, actually that could cause us a problem. So yeah, I feel like the way that you design that process, like you need to be so on, like as like from a recruitment stance, like obviously before the job advert goes out, you need to define like your skill gaps, your thought gaps. You need to figure out what the personality of the team is and whether or not a certain personality will fit within that team. It would be a shame to turn someone down because they don't match like the culture of the team, but sometimes that does happen. If you've got a very strong narrative in the team, it's like this person's not going to enjoy working with us. Like this person's not going to enjoy being in this space because they're this and we're this, or however that might work. You've got to be aware of that. You can't just force someone to be different in a team. But once you've done that bit, get the job spec out there. Just make sure you get that small amount of contact time that you have with that person before they start in that position. Make sure that gives you what you need, not just like the easy approach of like, I'll use an online platform to just okay, yeah, you've used ChatGPT to write your SQL query, but whatever, come in for an interview.
Yeah, and I think what I like about it is, I argue as from my profession, the most important part of any recruitment process is the bit before you write the job specification, what I tend to call the discovery, the deep dive, the analysis or whatever. But because it informs everything else. It sounds what you've done there is quite nicely. You know what you're hiring for. You've mapped it out. It's not reactive. You're planning out the hires that you need, and you're planning out the culture that you need, and you're planning out the problem that you need to solve with the team that you have. And those things relate to the hiring, and most importantly, inform the hiring process. So, I think a lot of recruitment falls into. People don't like to spend time in recruitment because it's even as a leader, it's fun getting the people once they're there and doing the thing, but the getting of the people, the recruitment bit, isn't the fun bit. So it's always it's good. It's always got to infer everything else. Most importantly, so I suppose in terms of data products, because obviously now you've got the culture of the team, you built it from the hiring process. How do you build a data product and dashboard that's actually going to be used by people, most importantly, and I suppose more generally, data as a product, because again, we've talked about the executive team buy-in and building the culture and the team and everything around that. But now I suppose this is the last bit, how do you actually get it used by the business and against the business aims?
I think the thing is like making data be used and making people use sort of products. A massive part of that goes into sort of the building. Like you've got to make sure that from the start, you're building something that people genuinely want, and you're building it well enough for people to use. I find it quite funny. So I think over the last few years, and maybe I've just started to like hear it more, and maybe it's always been said, but the amount of, and this is probably going to draw me a lot of heat on LinkedIn, but the amount of people sitting there going like, we're trying to remove the export to Excel from our like BI suite. And I'm like, why? That's your job. Like, data is the product. Like, wherever you work as a business, like I sell data, I sell insights, I sell information. Not me as a business, like not like the business. Reality Mind does sell data. That's what we do. But like, if I'm working in a retailer, my job is to sell a product that people want to use. If someone's pulling that data set out of Power BI and using it to make decisions, tick, that's the right thing. You're correct. That's what you want to do. But then this sense of pride takes over where you're like, no, because all the insights should be from my dashboard. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be. It's the shop front. That's the advert. That's the billboard. That's the look what you can get from this data. Like it's advertisement space. And obviously when you're building a dashboard, you've got like a tiny little rectangle of information or like of screen space to work with. And everyone, obviously the information hierarchy is important, and we can get very technical around like how to design the sort of UX of a dashboard to be used. I'm not going to get into that because there's more than enough information out there in the world. Use all that, but just be aware that like that little rectangle of screen space that you've got, that's your advert, that's your, like if that was your CV, how does it get you the job? And the job here is selling that insight, getting people to use that insight. It's not forcing it on someone. You're not going to sit there and go, okay, you've got to use this.
It's like the adage, everything is sales. It's literally, it's one of the most important skill sets because you've got to sell everything to anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. And like, that comes from understanding the customer. Whether that customer is one person looking for a particular metric, and it's a very small part of the business, that's your customer. You can find that person and you can define exactly what they need. If the customer's a bit broader or it's a bit more like obscure, or you don't know what they are, you have to really think about what sort of thing you're going to have to get from that. And like that's, if someone's going from that top line view of your dashboard and scrolling down because they want to find out more, success. That's a win because you've captured their interest enough for them to want to keep scrolling. I mean, let's look at social media. Like that's literally the prime example of, well, we've captured their imagination now, so we're just going to keep them scrolling. I don't want my colleagues to be doom scrolling on our dashboards. I want them to get their information and go. But if they've got that curiosity and they want to sort of build through that, and I think like a data team should be driving curiosity, great.
Do you track things like how long a user spends on the actual platform integrated? Because obviously you can maybe get a baseline of how long it takes them to get the insight they need to make the decision that they need to, and then anything else is sort of interest based. Yeah,
I mean, I'd love to. We're currently fairly restricted in the metrics that we pull out of our dashboards. We can obviously get the basic stuff in terms of visits, views, and that sort of stuff. We do a lot of working directly with stakeholders to be like, does this serve purpose? So we do a lot of interviewing and sort of the more like qualitative data almost, sort of figuring out actually, is this doing what it needs to do? Getting that sort of metric would be huge. Getting the sort of, as you say, has this person come on, got what they need? I mean, if the session is on and then off, like instant, they're on for like 10 seconds, that's someone that you need to then go to and say, did you find what you were looking for? And it's the same as, it's the exact same as what you're doing in the supermarket. Did you find what you were looking for? It's like, no, I didn't. I came in for milk and you've not got any. And that's, you need to sort of do that follow-up if you can. If they're on there and they're rooting around, don't think that a long time on your dashboard is good, because it might be that it's a really bad dashboard and people are like, what do these lines mean? What's this information? All I need to know is how many people we churned last month. I can't find it. Like I've got loads of information that seems to be churn, but I don't know. I guess like it'll be bad for me. I mean, I'm gonna have to say it, but as a data leader, it's like, don't just use the data. Like if it's time spent on a dashboard or like number of visits and that sort of stuff, one visit once a week isn't a bad thing. It might mean that one person needs that information on a Monday morning, they get it and they go. It's worth following up with that one person to be like, oh, like, do you like, I mean, you'll see the retention if they open it on a Monday morning. You're like, okay, we've retained that customer.
Yeah. So it's almost like treating it like a software developer.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's probably the final insight as well. So treat your dashboards, treat your data product as a software engineer. Think about UX, UI. But that's all the time we have for now. I think we could probably do a follow-up episode on data products. It probably sounds like that to give enough space to it. It sounds like we could do a follow-up episode now. So let us know if you'd find that interesting in the comments maybe. I want to thank Sam for taking the time to have a chat all about data leadership and culture and data products today. Where's the best they follow you on LinkedIn? Is that the best way to follow you on? Follow me on LinkedIn. That's my main platform at the moment. So reach out and you can tell me that I'm wrong about the export to Excel button. I'll have that conversation. Yeah, and if you've got any further questions, just put them in the comments below. I'll try and do follow-ups as well. So if we haven't got enough comments, it'd be great to follow up with Sam. But that's all we have time for now. Goodbye.
Dallas.